Elizabeth Taylor, a life Hollywood couldn't control. Elizabeth Taylor was not just a movie star. She was a myth, a scandal, and a warning wrapped in beauty. To the world, she was the woman with impossible violet eyes, dripping in diamonds, married too many times to count. But behind the glamour lived a woman shaped by pain, obsession, addiction, and a lifelong hunger for love. This is the real story of Elizabeth Taylor. Her rise, her dark secrets, her explosive love life, her fearless performances, and the price she paid for living boldly in a world that demanded silence from women. Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor was born on February 27, 1932, in London, England. Her parents were wealthy Americans, and from the moment she was born, Elizabeth was treated as something special, almost unreal. Her violet blue eyes were natural, not enhanced. Even as a child, people stared. When World War II began, her family moved to Los Angeles. It was there that Hollywood noticed her, and never let go. At just 10 years old, Elizabeth signed a contract with MGM Studios. She wasn't old enough to understand what it meant, but the studio did. They owned her image. They controlled her weight, her smile, her future. At age 12, she became a global star after National Velvet. While other children played, Elizabeth worked under hot lights, memorized lines, and learned one brutal truth early. Love in Hollywood had conditions. As Elizabeth entered her teenage years, the studio reshaped her from a child actress into a glamorous young woman. But inside, she was still a frightened girl. She suffered a severe back injury that caused lifelong pain. Doctors prescribed strong medication, starting a dependency that would follow her for decades. MGM demanded perfection. Any rebellion was punished. Any emotion was suppressed. By her late teens, Elizabeth Taylor was one of the most famous women in the world. Yet emotionally isolated, physically hurting, and deeply lonely. Hollywood applauded her beauty. No one asked how she was surviving. Elizabeth Taylor didn't marry for stability. She married to escape. Her first husband, Conrad Hilton Jr., was abusive. The marriage ended quickly, leaving her emotionally shaken. She married again, and again, searching for safety, passion, and understanding. Then came Mike Todd. Mike Todd was different. He adored her. Protected her. Made her laugh. For the first time, Elizabeth felt truly loved. Then tragedy struck. In 1958, Mike Todd died in a plane crash. Elizabeth was devastated. She spiraled into grief, and into the arms of Eddie Fisher, her best friend's husband. The scandal shocked America. She was labeled a homewrecker, a villain. But Elizabeth didn't apologize. She had learned that society forgave men, but punished women for desire. Then came Richard Burton. Their love story was volcanic, violent arguments, obsessive devotion, public chaos. They drank heavily. They fought brutally. They loved fiercely. The world watched every move. The Vatican condemned them. The press hunted them. They married. Divorced. Married again. Divorced again. Elizabeth later admitted, "I don't regret loving him. I regret that we hurt each other." This relationship defined her image forever. A woman too emotional, too intense, too much. But Elizabeth Taylor refused to be smaller. Behind the diamonds and headlines, Elizabeth Taylor was fighting for her life. She underwent more than 30 surgeries. She became dependent on painkillers and alcohol. She collapsed physically and emotionally multiple times. At one point, doctors gave her little chance of survival. Rehab was rare for celebrities then, admitting weakness was dangerous. But Elizabeth did it anyway. She survived when many didn't. Elizabeth Taylor changed how women were portrayed on screen. In Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, she played frustration and desire without apology. In Butterfield 8, she shattered the illusion of purity. In Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, she stripped herself of glamour entirely. The role was raw, cruel, emotional, and unforgettable. Critics said she went too far. She won an Academy Award. Elizabeth proved that a woman could be powerful, sexual, broken, and brilliant. All at the same time. In the 1980s, Elizabeth Taylor did something few celebrities dared to do. She stood up for AIDS patients when fear ruled the world. She founded the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and touched patients others refused to acknowledge. This wasn't publicity. It was personal. She had known loss. She had known silence. She refused to be silent again. Elizabeth Taylor passed away on March 23, 2011, at age 79. She left behind legendary films, scandals that challenged morality, a legacy of compassion, a blueprint for fearless womanhood. She lived loudly. She loved recklessly. She survived what was meant to destroy her. Elizabeth Taylor was never perfect. She was human. She was complicated. She was unforgettable. Hollywood tried to shape her. Society tried to shame her. But Elizabeth Taylor belonged to no one. And that is why she will never be forgotten. Marilyn Monroe, the smile that hid a broken soul. The most famous woman in the world, she was the most photographed woman of the 20th century. A global symbol of beauty, desire, and fantasy. But Marilyn Monroe was not who the world thought she was. Behind the platinum hair and breathy voice lived a woman haunted by abandonment, addiction, and a desperate need to be loved, not admired. This is not the myth Hollywood sold you. This is the real life of Marilyn Monroe. Her tragic childhood, her rise to fame, her secret intelligence, her dangerous relationships, her bold screen image, and the lonely death that still raises questions today. Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles. Her father was absent. Her mother suffered from severe mental illness and was later institutionalized. As a child, Norma Jean was passed between foster homes and orphanages. She was abused. She was unwanted. She learned early that survival meant pleasing others. At just 16 years old, she married to escape the orphanage system. This wasn't romance. It was self-preservation. The loneliness she felt as a child would follow her for the rest of her life. Hollywood didn't discover Marilyn Monroe. It invented her. Norma Jean dyed her hair platinum blonde, changed her voice, her walk, her smile, everything. The studio created a fantasy because fantasy sold tickets. But the transformation came at a cost. Studio executives controlled her body, her relationships, her public image. She was typecast as the dumb blonde, even though she was deeply intelligent, loved literature, and studied acting seriously. Marilyn once said, "I knew I belonged to the public and to the world, not because I was talented, but because I never belonged to anything else." Marilyn became a superstar in films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, The 7-Year Itch, Some Like It Hot. Audiences laughed. Men desired her. Hollywood made millions. But behind the scenes, Marilyn was underpaid, mocked, sexually exploited, emotionally neglected. Executives dismissed her intelligence. Co-stars underestimated her. The press reduced her to a body. She played the role because she had no choice. But it slowly destroyed her self-worth. Marilyn Monroe didn't want fame. She wanted safety. She married 3 times. James Dougherty, youthful escape. Joe DiMaggio, controlling, jealous, violent. Arthur Miller, intellectual, distant, emotionally cold. Joe DiMaggio loved Marilyn, but hated Marilyn Monroe. Arthur Miller admired her mind, but didn't understand her pain. She also had rumored relationships with powerful men, including the Kennedy brothers, relationships surrounded by secrecy, manipulation, and danger. Marilyn was always surrounded by people, yet emotionally alone. By the late 1950s, Marilyn Monroe was no longer just fighting fame. She was fighting her own mind. Marilyn suffered from severe insomnia, a condition rooted in childhood trauma. Nights terrified her. Silence reminded her of abandonment. Sleep never came easily. Doctors, encouraged by studio demands, prescribed pills. First, mild sedatives. Then barbiturates. Then combinations that should never have been mixed. No one monitored her intake. No one stopped her. Hollywood didn't see a patient. They saw a problem. Marilyn began depending on medication to sleep, wake up, calm anxiety, escape emotional pain. Alcohol followed naturally. Not for pleasure, but for numbness. She became unreliable on sets. She forgot lines. She arrived late. The media labeled her difficult, unstable, unprofessional. But the truth was simpler and sadder. Marilyn wasn't lazy. She wasn't arrogant. She was medically neglected and emotionally abandoned. Every pill was a cry for rest. Every missed call was a sign of exhaustion. Every breakdown was a warning Hollywood ignored. Marilyn Monroe did not wake up one day and decide to become the world's most desired woman. That image was carefully designed for her, constructed by studios that understood one thing very well: desire sells better than depth. Hollywood discovered that Marilyn's beauty could be shaped, controlled, and marketed. Her walk was softened. Her voice was trained to sound breathy and innocent. Even her silence was choreographed. Nothing about Marilyn Monroe was accidental. Audiences believed it was natural. That illusion made her famous. And it also trapped her forever. In films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Marilyn became temptation itself, smiling, playful, magnetic. But behind the camera, she felt exposed rather than empowered. The laughter on screen hid a growing discomfort off screen. Men admired her image, not her humanity. Directors praised her appearance while ignoring her ideas. Crew members stared instead of listening. Marilyn once said she felt naked even when fully dressed. Fame made her visible everywhere, yet truly seen nowhere. Then came the 7-year itch. The white dress scene changed everything. To the world, it was playful and bold. To Marilyn, it was humiliating. Crowds gathered. Cameras flashed. Strangers shouted her name as air lifted the fabric around her. That single moment followed her for the rest of her life. It became larger than her talent. Louder than her voice. Stronger than any role she ever played. She was no longer an actress. She was a frozen image. A body captured in time. What most people never understood was Marilyn's hunger for serious work. She studied acting obsessively. She read poetry late into the night. She admired pain, complexity, and truth. She didn't want worship. She wanted respect. But Hollywood laughed at her ambition. They told her beauty was enough. They warned her not to change. So Marilyn obeyed. And suffered quietly. Every bold scene earned applause. And stole a little more of her dignity. Her image liberated audiences. But imprisoned the woman behind it. She became a symbol of freedom she herself never felt. The more confident she appeared on screen, the lonelier she became off it. Her body made millions. Her soul was ignored. Marilyn Monroe paid for every bold moment. with judgment, with loneliness, and with a lifelong identity she never chose. The investigation ended quickly. Too quickly, some believed. Over the years, theories emerged. Some suggested an accident. Others suspected deeper forces at play. History has never agreed on one version. And perhaps it never will. What remains undeniable is not how Marilyn Monroe died, but how she lived in those final months. She lived surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. She lived admired by millions, yet understood by few. She lived in a world that took her image, her energy, her youth, and offered very little protection in return. Marilyn Monroe did not die as a legend. She died as a woman. Tired, vulnerable, and human. A woman whose pain was never truly resolved. A woman whose voice was never fully heard. And long after the headlines faded, that silence became the loudest part of her story. Legacy, the woman the world still misunderstands. Marilyn Monroe became immortal the moment she died. Not because she chose to be remembered that way, but because death froze her in the one form the world was comfortable with. Young. Beautiful. Smiling. She never aged. Never disappointed. Never spoke back again. Her image stopped changing, while the world continued to consume it. But the real Marilyn Monroe was never an image. She was a woman who survived a childhood without safety. Passed from home to home. Never certain where she belonged. Never certain she was wanted. Long before the cameras, she learned that love could disappear overnight. That silence could be dangerous. That survival meant adapting. She carried that fear into adulthood. Into fame. Into every relationship. Marilyn was not born fragile. She was made fragile by abandonment. And fame did not heal that wound. It widened it. She became a woman fighting mental illness at a time when mental illness was treated as weakness, embarrassment, or inconvenience. There was no language for trauma then. No compassion for anxiety. No patience for depression. There were only pills. And pressure. And expectations. Marilyn was expected to perform happiness. To radiate desire. To smile through exhaustion. And she did. Until it cost her everything. She was an actress craving respect in an industry that rewarded obedience more than intelligence. People forget this. Marilyn studied acting seriously. She read philosophy. She read poetry. She challenged directors quietly, and paid for it loudly. Hollywood wanted her body. Not her mind. They laughed when she asked for better roles. They mocked her discipline. They dismissed her ambition. And when she struggled under the weight of it all, they called her difficult. Not wounded. Not overwhelmed. Difficult. Marilyn Monroe became the most famous woman in the world. And one of the least protected. She was surrounded by people. Managers. Doctors. Publicists. Lovers. Yet when she needed safety most, there was no system designed to protect her. Because Hollywood never built systems for women like Marilyn. It built machines. Machines that extracted beauty, youth, emotion. And when the machine broke down, it replaced the part. After her death, Marilyn Monroe was reborn. Not as a person, but as a product. Her face appeared on posters. Her name sold perfumes. Her image fueled fantasies she never consented to. She became a symbol of desire without context. Beauty without pain. Sex appeal without consequence. And the world preferred it that way. Because acknowledging the truth would require responsibility. It would require admitting that fame can destroy. That admiration can coexist with cruelty. That silence is not harmless. Marilyn once said, "I don't mind being a symbol, but I hate being treated like one." That sentence explains her entire legacy. She did not hate being admired. She hated being reduced. She hated being flattened into one emotion. One role. One meaning. She was complex. Contradictory. Brilliant and insecure at the same time. The world didn't know what to do with women like that. So it simplified her. Even today, people argue about Marilyn Monroe. Was she strong or weak? Smart or naive? A victim or a manipulator? But these questions miss the point. Marilyn was human. And humanity is rarely simple. Her story is not just about one woman. It is a warning. Fame without protection is dangerous. When a person is visible to millions but supported by no one, the damage is inevitable. Beauty without humanity is destructive. When a person is admired for how they look but ignored for who they are, their identity erodes. Silence kills. When pain is hidden to maintain an image, it grows louder internally. Marilyn Monroe didn't fail Hollywood. Hollywood failed her. It failed to see her as a whole person. It failed to care when she struggled. It failed to slow down when she was breaking. And then it immortalized her. So it wouldn't have to feel guilty. But her legacy refuses to stay silent. Because every generation rediscovers her. And asks the same question. How could someone so loved feel so alone? The answer is uncomfortable. Love from a distance is not protection. Admiration is not care. Fame is not safety. Marilyn Monroe did not die because she was weak. She died after carrying expectations no human being could survive indefinitely. She died after being asked to be perfect, desirable, grateful, and quiet. All at the same time. Her legacy is not her smile. It is the conversation she forces us to have. About how we treat women. About how we treat mental illness. About what fame demands, and what it destroys. Marilyn Monroe remains misunderstood. Because understanding her requires honesty. Honesty about exploitation. About neglect. About systems that profit from beauty and abandon the people behind it. She is remembered everywhere. Yet still rarely understood. And perhaps that is the final tragedy. That the woman who wanted to be known for her depth became famous for her surface. But time has begun to shift the story. Today, Marilyn Monroe is no longer just a fantasy. She is a lesson. And her legacy lives not in posters or photographs, but in the warning she left behind. A warning written in silence. A warning paid for with her life. Marilyn Monroe's life ended early. But her story never did. She died young. Yet the world never let her grow old. She became frozen in time. Trapped inside a smile that hid more than it revealed. Marilyn was loved by millions. But protection never came with love. She was admired, desired, photographed, and consumed. Yet rarely understood. Her death did not begin the mystery. It revealed the cost. The cost of fame without care. The cost of beauty without humanity. The cost of silence. Marilyn Monroe did not want to be a symbol. She wanted to be safe. She wanted to be respected. She wanted to be real. She didn't fail because she was weak. She was overwhelmed in a world that took more than it gave. And that is why her story still matters. Because Marilyn Monroe is not just a memory. She is a warning. A reminder that behind every icon is a human being who needed protection more than applause.